All right, we'll call K-12 Subcommittee to order. Mr. Clerk, please open up the board. Members, please log in. All right, Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Chairman, you have 7 members present. You have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Mr. Clerk. Members, any personal orders before we get kicked off here? A couple of housekeeping notes in the calendar here. The item number, let me see here. Item number 9, House Bill 2482 is off notice. Item number 10, 2483 is off notice. Item number 11, House Bill 2458 is rolled to the hill. And we have one more. Did we have one more that was rolled? Item number 18. Is that to the hill?
Yes.
House Bill 1975 is rolled to the hill. All right, and that brings us up to the top of the calendar here, which he was needing a little bit more time on. So we're going to roll House Bill, item number 1, House Bill 2422, a couple of spaces, 2 spaces. And item number 2, HJR 92, he texted and said that, oh, he is here on time. All right, so I didn't see him walk in. All right, so that brings us to item number 2, HJR 92 by Representative Barrett. Second, you have properly motioned. You are recognized on HJR 92, and I believe you do have an amendment.
I do, Mr. Chair.
All right, what is the drafting code?
013325.
All right, 13325, and it does rewrite the bill.
Yes, sir.
Do I have a motion on the amendment? Properly motioned. I'll second it. And members, it does rewrite the bill. So without objection, I will be voting to adopt amendment 13325. All those in favor of adopting the amendment, please indicate by saying aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. We are back on your bill as amended. You are recognized on HJR 92.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. As you can see in the amendment that you've just adopted, we have pared down the original filing that we had on this HJR to a single sentence, adding to Article 11, Section 12, seeking to amend the Constitution to add this one sentence that says, the state of Tennessee acknowledges that a parent has an inherent and inalienable right to direct the education of the parent's child, including but not limited to the right to educate their child at home at their sole discretion. The intent with this resolution, members, is to secure the right of parents to make these educational decisions and choices that are in the best interest of their children in the Constitution, to prevent further legislatures or administrations from infringing upon that right. And ironically, or if you believe in serendipity, today is Homeschool Day on the Hill. There are hundreds of homeschoolers up in the Capitol right now that will be getting an address from me a little bit later on. Hopefully I can bring them some good news about this. And you do have in your inbox a letter from THEA, the Tennessee Home Educators Association, in support of this resolution.
All right, members, you've heard the explanation. Any questions for the sponsor? Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While I definitely understand the impetus behind this, my question is, what if a student just isn't getting the proper education from the homeschool experience, and he or she is, 3 to 4 to 5 grades behind? They're obviously not learning at a pace that will make them productive citizens. How do we deal with that, with this being embedded into our Constitution?
Representative Barrett.
Well, Representative McKenzie, I think what we have to decide as a legislature is, do we truly believe in school choice? Do we truly believe that the parents are the best deciders of what is in the best interest of their children? As we've adopted various policy provisions over the last several years related to the education choices that are being made by parents, the overwhelming sentiment in this legislature and in the administration in this state is that parents do have that ultimate right and decision in making those decisions. As it relates to how a child is progressing in some metric that you or someone else determines to be what they think is best, the parent ultimately gets to make that decision.
Thank you.
Chairman Watt?
Thank you, and thank you for the legislation. While I do agree with everything that you let out with, and as a big advocate of school choice, I think this legislation is maybe a little step too far, because with school choice, we do have to have accountability for all, not only for, parents have a right, I'm a big believer in that, but also parents have a right to make sure their child is educated. And I'm afraid with legislation such as this, that it would be a step too far, so I can't support it. Thank you.
Representative Barrett?
Chairman White, I appreciate the concern. My position would be that it is our obligation and role as the legislator to create the options available for parents to make those decisions, not to make the choices for them. And so this provision simply says that the parent gets to make the choice. It's our job to put as many choices and options out there on the table for them to have to choose from.
Chairman Watt?
So do you feel like the parents don't have those choices now? What is, we do have choice, public, charter, private, homeschool, virtual. So, and we do run into issues where children are taken out of schools, whether it be for homeschooling or virtual, where they're now coming back to public schools and they haven't had they're behind. So those are the things that concern me, that we do have the choice, but if we lose accountability for each individual child, that's what concerns me.
Representative Barrett?
And respectfully, we have students who have never left the public schools that are behind. We have only 35% of kids that are reading on grade level that have been in public school there the entire time. So there's a myriad of reasons as to why a student may or may not be progressing the way that we would like to see them progress as a legislature. But again, ultimately, the question with this bill and with everything that we've been doing is, do we truly believe that the parents should have this right? And is that right inalienable? Is our children a gift from God to the parents, or are they wards of the state?
Chairman Watt?
One last one. And while I agree with all that, we do, and you're right about the public schools. That's why we created, when I came in 2010, I carried all the charter legislation because we only had a limited amount of charters. I think we could have 20 in the state, and we expanded that. So I agree with all that. So we're giving parents choice for when the public schools aren't working or whatever school they may be in. And so that's the only thing that concerns me in the legislation, but thank you very much. I agree with everything you're saying. I'm just a little nervous about the legislation. Thank you.
Representative Balsall?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, sponsor, for bringing this. I think it's wonderful that we focus our attention on the fact that parents do have this inherent and inalienable right, as you describe it in your bill, in the resolution, I should say. Let me ask this, though, if I could, Representative Barrett. How, if at all, will this language, if adopted and placed in our Constitution, affect any existing statutes in Tennessee that pertain to homeschool?
Representative Barrett?
I don't think that it would affect any existing statute. I think the purpose of bringing a resolution like this and allowing the voters of Tennessee to decide whether or not they want to add this language to the Constitution would, in the future, protect any efforts by future legislators to somehow roll back or reduce the access that parents have to homeschooling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sponsor.
All right. Members, any other questions for our sponsor? Representative Reeves?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the sponsor, so when we amend the Constitution, of course, we're undertaking something very serious, and we have to think about all the downstream consequences of that. Certainly, I agree with the premise of what you've proposed, but what's driving this amendment to the Constitution? Is there something that is at issue right now?
Representative Barrett.
Thank you for the question, Representative Reeves. And I don't know that there is anything emergent today. But again, as we continue to come back year after year and bills are brought, most of them fail, attempting to somehow regulate or intervene into the homeschool or the home education relationship between parent and child. There is the concern that at some point in the future, there would be an effort that would be successful to somehow intervene between that relationship and have the state somehow try to step in and limit that authority of the parent to make that decision.
Representative Reeves.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And the reason I'm asking is I've got the statute books on my desk for the entire education code. And in the 1,000 or so pages, I went to look at how many of those pages regulate homeschooling, and less than 10 out of the 1,000 or so, which means over the decades that this General Assembly has met, they've been very hesitant to change anything with regard to homeschooling. And I'm glad about that. That's something that I would be hesitant to touch either, for all the reasons that you mentioned. So with that, I'm probably a no on this, not for the premise, but for the importance of amending our Constitution and thinking through all the downstream consequences. But I appreciate you bringing it. Thank you.
Representative Barrett.
And I appreciate the caution, Representative. I think it's important that we do approach these issues as we discuss the potential of amending our Constitution with extreme caution and care. But that's also why the process is built the way it is. This is the first step of a very long process that would be required to amend the Constitution. First, of course, we would have to get out of this subcommittee. After that, we would have to get to the floor. We would have to get an approval and an adoption by both the House and the Senate this year. And then we would have to come back again in the next General Assembly and go through the same process over again. And then it would be presented in 2030 in the next gubernatorial election to the voters to have to approve that. So today's measure, if we all agree that this is a concept that we agree with and we like the fact that we are securing and stating loudly and boldly that as a legislature, we believe that parents have the right to choose whatever education path is best for their children, then this is just the first step. We're not doing anything rash today. We're starting the process so that we can continue to have this conversation over the next several years.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Seeing none, I believe we are set to vote. Mr. Clerk, please open up the board for voting. Members, please cast your vote. Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 4 ayes, 4 noes.
And with that, HJR 92 does fail to pass. That brings us to item number 3, House Bill 1544 by Representative Barrett. Properly motioned. Representative Barrett, you are recognized on House Bill 1544, and I do believe you have an amendment.
I do, Mr. Chairman. Drafting code 013731.
All right, that's what we have. Members, it does rewrite the bill. Do I have a motion? Properly motioned, does rewrite the bill. So without objection, we will vote to adopt amendment 013731. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. We are back on your bill as amended. You are recognized on, sorry about that, House Bill 1544.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, just yesterday, I think everyone here was present on the House floor yesterday when we heard Majority Leader William Lambert say this, and I quote, "Members, data and facts are never something we should be afraid of, period, end of story. When we have all of the data at our fingertips to be the voice of our districts, to be able to make decisions that are in the best interest of Tennessee, we're able to make better decisions." Ladies and gentlemen, this bill simply requires the Department of Education to provide us that data necessary for us to make solid, sound decisions for our districts as it relates to the Education Freedom Scholarship. All we're asking the department to do by providing us this data is give us the information that is necessary for us to make this program better. I'm not trying to relitigate whether or not this program is needed or not, if it's good or bad. All I'm saying is for us to be able to make sure that it reaches the most students possible and that is being done in a responsible way, that every decision we make up here as legislators comes with information that we need to make those decisions in the best interest of our constituents. The governor said, as you know, we've only had those scholarships available 1 year, so there's no data yet that would be of any value. I agree there's no data of any value, but it's not because it's only been here for a year. It's because the department has refused to provide us the data. The only thing that they have given us is the total number of applications, and use that as a justification for continuing to expand the program. And while interest is a good thing, and that does show us that there is demand for these scholarships, what it doesn't tell us is who's getting it, who's actually getting to take advantage of the program, or if there are any gaps in the program, who's getting left out. And so this data that's requested in this bill would allow us to be able to see those blind spots and then make adjustments in the future. And with that, I say I'm ready for questions.
All right, thank you for that. Representative McKenzie, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, sponsor, for this piece of legislation. Let me say up front, I had I won't even call it similar. I had a piece of legislation asking for transparency, and this piece of legislation by far outweighs that and trumps that in terms of just getting to the core of what I think we as legislators need to make an informed decision. So this really cuts the uncertainty in terms of what types of people are getting these vouchers, because every time the majority leader was in here last week talking about firefighters and teachers and first responders needing an opportunity to get these vouchers. And okay, I'm great with that. But all those are people that are getting the vouchers. And it was not once, not twice, but 3 times during that conversation we had last night on the House floor that he brought up the need and what are we scared of as legislators, as a General Assembly? What is gathering data? Why is that a problem? That should never be a problem, I think was almost a direct quote. We should always be seeking to get information. It's never a bad thing. That was a direct quote. So again, thank you for bringing this piece of legislation. In terms of what can we do with it, to ask a question. So what do you think, and it's looking to the future, but to respond to the governor, what are some of the things you think can be done with the data if this piece of legislation is passed?
Representative Barrett.
Thank you, Representative McKenzie, for the comments and the question. Look, first of all, there's 2 things to point out about this and I'm going to anticipate some of the opposition to the bill. One, it doesn't cost us anything. The fiscal note is not significant. The Department of Education already has access to this information. They can make 1 or 2 simple changes on the application for the scholarship going forward and gather all the data that's requested here. And they have the staff to be able to produce it and send it back to us. 2, the data is disidentified. So it's all aggregated data with no names attached to it. We're not disclosing any personal information of any child or family. So those are 2 key points. But what can we do with the data? One of the things that we've asked in here is not only tell us how many scholarships are going to each county, but how many applications are coming from each county. And what that data does is that if you put those 2 numbers together, that gives us an acceptance rate. So what is the acceptance rate for scholarship applications in each county? Are there counties that are extremely high or extremely low? We would be able to know that then, and then we can start asking questions. Well, why is that? And then we also have asked for the same data when it comes to each particular LEA. And I would like to see it broken down, and it's requested in here that the data be broken down by school within the LEA. So for instance, here in Davidson County, if the highest number of applications were coming from, say, Glencliff High School, that may indicate that there's a particular problem at Glencliff High School that we and the department need to look into to find out what the issue is there. So all of this data is designed to give us really to prod us to ask questions in the future. Even the bracketed income data, if the majority of these scholarships are being awarded to a particular data set or income bracket, then that's should prod us to ask the question, why is that? And what are we missing? What adjustments or tweaks do we need to make to the program to make sure that that's getting more widespread?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Haston. My question is, and I promise you, this is not a pick on Representative Barrett Day. I appreciate you very, very much. I wish you'd given this to Representative Clinton. Easy for me to vote no. He's got some good ones. But I see a little disconnect between this bill and the one you just advocated for of more parental freedom. Parents have made the choice to go to private school, and so we're asking for private schools to give information that even DOE doesn't collect on our public schools. So I see a little disconnect in what we're asking for here between the two pieces of legislation, from parental responsibility, making their choices, to now going to a private school and they need to give up this information.
Representative Barrett.
Well, thank you, Chairman White. Again, this program was created to try to solve a problem, right? Is correct. The problem that we identified last year when we adopted this program was that there are certain families that felt like they were trapped in their school system, in their public school, and they needed access, some pathway to freedom in order to make a choice that maybe they couldn't afford to make. And so by providing these scholarships, we have addressed that issue to open up those pathways. We didn't create any new choice. We just created more ability to exercise that choice. And so in doing that, as a state, now that we've created this program and we've spent $250,000 a year in order to fund it, and now we're going to increase the total scholarships potentially this year over $300 million. As fiscal conservatives, we need to make sure that the money that we are spending is accomplishing the goal of the program. And that's why we ask, who's getting it? Is it people in the 0 to 75,000 income range? If not, if that's a very small percentage and the majority of the scholarships are going to a higher percentage or a higher income bracket, then we need to ask those questions. Is the program doing what we anticipated or what we wanted it to do? Are these people getting left behind or left out? Is there something additional we need to add to the program so that they're getting the options to make those choices as well? So again, the data that's being collected here is already being asked on the applications. The income data has to be provided because we have to determine which bucket they fall into in the scholarships. So all we're doing then is taking that data and plugging it into bracketed income stratas so that we can then see where on the curve are most of the scholarships going. And again, and if there are gaps there, we need to make sure that we can find a way to fill those gaps.
All right, thank you. Representative Bolso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Barrett, for the thoughtful legislation, which regrettably I do not support this time. But I'm interested to know why you find it necessary that the Department of Education report to the General Assembly each year about the racial and ethnic background of the eligible students who applied for a scholarship and who received a scholarship. Given that we move as much as we can towards a colorblind society, what, in your view, makes it important that the General Assembly know the racial and ethnic background of the applicants and the recipients for the scholarships?
Representative Barrett.
Again, thank you, Representative Bolso, for the question. And I think it goes, again, to answer the question that we have to look at is, who is the program benefiting? Who is it? Who's taking advantage of it? And who may or may not be able to take advantage of it? And so any data that we get, again, is just information. Information is king. G.I. Joe used to say, knowing is half the battle. And if we don't know, then where these scholarships are going, even on a racial breakdown, then we don't have any way of understanding exactly how it's being affected on the ground and the people that are out in the communities that need these options available to them. So let's say we did collect this data and start filing reports back to the legislature, and we find that less than 5% of the scholarships are being awarded to African-American students, while 25% of the applications are coming from African-American students. That should prompt us to ask the question, why is there that disparity? What is going on in the program or in the application process that is leading so few applicants to be able to get through from that data set? And so that's the only reason that we're asking for that. This is not some sort of DEI question. We're not trying to create any advantage for any one ethnic group or racial group. We're simply trying to make sure that nobody's getting left out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I will congratulate you on the first time I think G.I. Joe has been introduced as, I
There we
mean,
go.
if you can work He-Man, Masters of the Universe or Ghostbusters in there, you might get my vote on some things. All right, Representative Reeves, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too appreciate the G.I. Joe reference. Does this apply to, Mr. Sponsor, does this apply to just the Education Freedom Scholarships or also the ESAs?
Representative Barrett.
Thank you, Representative. This is just for the EFSAs. As you know, the ESAs already have a reporting mechanism built in with a comptroller that audits that program. So this would just apply strictly to the EFSAs.
Representative Reeves.
Thank you. Does it track all of the things that are laid out here in the ESA program?
Representative Barrett.
I'm not aware of what's being tracked in the ESA. Like I said, I read the comptroller's report, but I don't know what they were charged with, what data points that they were charged to look at.
Okay. And I guess my last question, and I appreciate the back and forth, Mr. Chair, is it not important to collect that in the other program as well? And I just open that up because you've made an impassioned argument, but we've got two programs, and I'm just wondering why the other wasn't included.
Representative Barrett.
Thank you. And I appreciate you pointing out that we have two programs that are largely doing the same thing and probably should be combined into one, but that's not this bill. And if you or the committee wanted to bring an amendment to add the ESA under this as well to get the same data, I would be more than welcome to have that as a friendly amendment.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? All right, seeing none, I think we're set to vote. Mr. Clerk, please open up the board for voting. Members, please cast your vote. See any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 4 ayes, 4 noes.
All right, with that, House Bill 1544 does fail to pass. Thank you, Representative Barrett.
Thank you.
That brings us back to item number 1 on the calendar, House Bill 2422 by Representative Martin. Oh, I'm sorry. I did skip over something earlier. My fault. Representative Hakeem, you are recognized for a personal order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Representative Greg Martin and the Hamilton County delegation, we'd like to acknowledge the presence today of our Superintendent, Justin Robertson, and School Board Member, Jody Schaefer. And would you please give them a welcome?
All right. Yeah, thank you for that. Back to Chairman Martin here on House Bill 2422. Do I have a motion? Properly motioned on House Bill 2422. And do you have an amendment?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The amendment drafting code is 013734.
Okay. It does rewrite the bill. All right, and it does rewrite the bill. Members, do I have a motion on the amendment? Properly motion. Members of objection, we are set to vote to adopt amendment 013734. All those in favor, please say aye. All opposed, say no. The ayes have it. We are back on your bill as amended. Chairman Martin, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. House Bill 2422, as amended, establishes a 2-year pilot program to evaluate whether administering fewer district and state mandated assessment results in students achieving greater academic success. students, families, and educators widely agree that the level of standardized testing occurring in Tennessee public schools is just too much, particularly within grades K through 8. Some students may be taking 22 standardized tests across subject areas of ELA, math, science, and social studies throughout the year. This high number is due to the requirements set by the state, which most school districts then supplement with additional testing to more effectively monitor student progress towards intended learning outcomes. The Department of Education would select up to 10 LEAs to participate in a pilot program, and students in grade K through 8 in participating schools would be eligible for reduced testing requirements if they achieve above the 40th percentile on the Universal Reading Screener and on the Universal Screener in mathematics. I want to thank the superintendent of schools in Hamilton County for making the trip from Nashville this morning, and if it would please the committee, I would ask that he'd be recognized to testify at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
All right, thank you for that. Members, we do have someone who put in a card to testify today. So without objection, we will go out of session and invite Mr. Robertson up. Is it Robertson or Roberson? Robertson. And just make sure you state your name and who you represent for the record. And then you have 2 minutes, and then we'll open it up for any questions.
Yep. Justin Robertson, Superintendent, Hamilton County Schools. Thank you, Chairman Hastings, member of the committee, for the time to come here. Appreciate our legislative chair being with us and her fourth grade son, Harrison, who's on a civics trip with her. I want to start by thanking Greg Martin for bringing this bill. And I want to be super clear. This came up earlier in the committee. This is in no way trying to get around accountability. I'm a firm believer of spending 2.5 decades between Shelby County schools and Hamilton County that the state has made tremendous strides in terms of accountability, not just with testing, but even with the quality of teachers. And so this is not trying to get around that. And Greg Martin and I have agreed on that since the beginning. At the same time, as he mentioned, we're hearing consistently from families, students, and board members that the amount of testing is too much. Testing is necessary. The intent of the testing is what is in question. Right now, we're trying to balance the difference between skills-based assessments, or those screeners, and standards-based assessments, which are often called benchmarks. I think about this like a doctor's visit. Many of us go to the doctor once a year, and you come back the next year, get the same blood work. Oftentimes, though, you have maybe a disease or some condition that requires that you come back to get more regular checkups. We know that we have students that need to be screened more often, but we also know that we have students that are on grade level that we should be focusing more on their progress towards standards. In education, we talk quite a bit about the balance between autonomy and also coherence. And we want to make sure that in this pilot, and the one that's being proposed by Greg Martin, is that we give several different districts the opportunity to be flexible, not again to get around accountability, but to have some flexibility to see how this goes. In Hamilton County, we'd continue to use the K through 2 screeners as we see the need for skills-based assessment, those early grades where students are learning how to read. And then in 4 through 8, we would want to use benchmark assessments more often, as we want to measure the progress towards mastery of standards. This approach keeps the state expectations for skills and standards in place while allowing the flexibility that districts need. Appreciate the many discussions this board has had about, or this body has had about testing accountability. Many superintendents across the state and school boards are having this conversation about how do we keep that accountability while at the same time reducing the amount of testing. Again, Chairman Haston, thank you for the time.
All right, thank you. Members, questions for our guest, Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking time out of what I know is an extremely busy schedule to come and present this to us. Mike, how many students are in Hamilton County School System?
About 44,500.
Okay.
Where's McKenzie?
Thank you. So my question is, so as it relates to a system, aren't there going to be a lot of outliers that would benefit from knowing whether there's a reading deficiency or a math deficiency that's not going to be captured because the overall LEA is hitting this mark?
Possibly, but in K through 2, when you go through the screener, you're going to have 3 years of data, 3 times a year. So basically 9 data points over the course of 3 years that will show a skills deficiency. From there is a deficiency. We're still saying the screener would be used in the later grades. But if you have a kindergarten student that on the first screener is testing above the 40th percentile and continues to do that for a number of years, as they get to 3rd grade, our contention would be that we need to be measuring more about mastery towards standards instead of just the skills-based.
Representative McKenzie?
Thank you. So, I think I'm on the right amendment, but as I read this amendment, I'm looking at English, language arts, and math is greater than 33%. So I know we're talking about 40%, but this looks like 33%. Maybe that's the achievement, but that to me says 1 out of every 3 is correct. And if that's our goal, getting 1 out of 3, that's going to be the LEA's benchmark. If they're on average, we're getting 1 out of 3 questions right. I'm not in favor of putting that system in an exemplary kind of set aside status. I don't think that should be our goal as a state. I don't think that should be our mission or our achievement mark. And likewise, TVOS level 3 is not a very high mark in my opinion, but that's included here. I just don't like to be blunt, I don't like the achievement level that we're potentially putting these LEAs into this exempt class for a 2-year pilot project, and there are going to be 10 of them. So that's just a lot of students that would not be doing well, in my opinion. That we're now going to ease on them in terms of testing in hopes that, to what end, I guess is what my question is. So that's my concern. Could you respond to my concern with this bill as presented?
Yes, sir. To be clear, students that were below the 40th percentile would continue to get both the screener and the benchmark. The levels that you're talking about are identifying who would be included as possibility of being in the 10 schools. It says you got to be in advancing or exemplary. It does mention a level 3, which I would contend is meeting the standard across the state. And I agree with you, the 33% can be eye-catching. But again, this is trying to set a standard for a district to be able to participate. The kids that would benefit from this are kids that are scoring above the 40th percentile. So we're not saying that every kid across the district would be exempt from the screeners. It's saying that kids that have scored above the 40th percentile, then starting in 3rd grade, would reduce the number of screeners.
So my last follow-up?
Yeah, Representative McKenzie?
Yeah, so definitely understood. I'll still push back and say the 40th percentile being set apart, the kids, that's not where I think we need to be aspirationally as a school district. We put a lot of funds. Every year we're asking for more funds to go into our education system. And it's in my mind, get us way above that 40th percentile in terms of being satisfied with where our students are. But thank you.
All right. Members, any other questions? All right. Seeing none, thank you for being here. Oh. Okay, Chairman White scared me to death there. All right. Thank you for coming
Yes, sir.
today. And without objection, we will go back into session and bring Chairman Martin back up. And Chairman White, you had a question for the sponsor? Chairman White.
Thank you, and sorry about that. I thought I missed my opportunity. One reason of what you're bringing up, we discussed this for years and years about the testing. But last session, we passed legislation where we created a innovation commission And they met this fall, and I think they got one more meeting that we passed a bill on just a few weeks ago to let them have one more meeting to look at this. It's House Bill 2277, I believe it is. And I think we would be shortchanging that. We're creating a pilot program for 10 districts here while we've got this Innovation Commission getting ready to do their report here shortly about this very thing. So I think we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves on this particular legislation. I'd rather do something statewide than district-wide.
All right, Chairman Martin.
Yes, I had spoken with, I believe, a member of that task force last evening, and they were asking me about this particular bill. And the conversation was that if this, and I'm not familiar with that as you are, Chairman White, but the thought was that if we pass this bill, then that whatever's coming, the House bill you reference, perhaps would be amended to make provisions for this so that it wouldn't be duplicated.
Chairman Slater, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for bringing this because I think you're in an area that does need to be looked at. The Innovation Committee that convened last summer and into the fall, and we do still have another meeting. I was honored to serve on that Innovation Committee. And in looking at what you're proposing, I'm not sure that we're going to gain from this proposal, from this pilot, enough information to help us when it comes to setting policy. And as was previously mentioned, the bill that, or the work that is coming out of that committee under HB 2277, I think will be a much better vehicle for us to have information so that we can move forward. I appreciate you bringing this legislation. I'm going to have to vote against it only because I'm not sure that it's complete enough. And I do think that we do have a vehicle that's coming that will be much more complete, give us much broader information so that we can set clear policy across the state.
Chairman Martin.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Chairman Slater. You know, I'm responding to the constituents that are in my district and listening to the parents and the teachers about the overwhelming number of tests. And so that's the reason that I'm bringing this as an opportunity to try to solve a problem that I perceive and have listened to the folks in my community. I appreciate the work of the innovation. I'm not as familiar with that as I am with the people of Hamilton County. And that's why I'm advocating on behalf of them in regard to this. And I would certainly appreciate your favorable vote, because I know that if we pass this pilot right here, that it's something that is going to be able to dovetail, and we're going to be able to amend things with the bill that you had mentioned that will make this pilot not be in contrast to it, but complementary of it. And for that reason, I would ask for your support.
All right. Members, any other questions? Seeing none, I think we're set to vote. Mr. Clerk, please open the board up for voting. Members, please cast your vote. Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 5 ayes, 3 noes.
All right, with that, House Bill 2422 goes on to full education. All right, that brings us to item number 4, House Bill 30 by Chairman Clemens. Properly motioned. Chairman Clemens, you are recognized, and I do believe you have an amendment.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The amendment simply changes the effective date, and it's barcode 14432.
Okay. It does not rewrite the bill, but you heard the explanation, members. Without objection, we'll go ahead and vote to adopt amendment 14432. Do I have a motion on the amendment? Properly motioned. All those in favor of adopting amendment 14432, please say aye. I was supposed to say no. The ayes have it. We are back on your bill as amended. You're recognized on House Bill 30.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And keeping with our theme this morning, like He-Man, you have the power. to codify the requirement that English language learners who receive language assistance services in the classroom during the school year be allowed to receive the same language assistance services while taking their TCAP or end of course assessments. We have over 83,000 EL students in this state in 24-25 school year. 144 of 155 LEAs serve EL students. And of course, ESSA requires EL students to meet the same requirements and standards as non-EL students. So this is an important thing, levels the playing field for these students. And for those who are maybe unfamiliar with the language services, assistance services that are provided, it's simply, in some cases, additional time, word-to-word dictionary, and breaks as needed, whatever's according to their ILP. And so with that, I think we may have testimony this morning. I'm not sure if that was requested appropriately, but I'll defer to that at this time.
It was. So you're saying that if you had trouble, who you're going to call would be Miss Melanie Allen. And without objection, members, we will go out of session. All right. Out of session. And we'll bring up Miss Melanie Allen. And if you would, just make sure you state your name for the record and who you represent or where you're from. And then you'll have 2 minutes and then we'll open it up for any questions.
Okay. Thank you so much. Good morning, Chairman Haston and members of the K-12 Subcommittee. My name is Melanie Torcilla Allen, and I'm a Middle Tennessee educator and instructional coach. And I'm also a former English learner. I am the daughter of 2 Cubans from Miami who really prioritize English language acquisition in our home. So as a teacher and a former English learner, I know that when students are developing English proficiency, the barrier is not intelligence or effort, it's specialized academic language. So if any of us took a test full of this sort of specialized academic language that we see in TCAP or even a benchmark, we would likely not have results that are an accurate measure of like our actual content knowledge. So similarly, without the supports like extended time for like language processing, paper-based testing, small group testing, or a bilingual word-to-word dictionary, which to clarify does not provide any definition. State assessments may measure English fluency rather than grade level content area mastery for our English learners. It's important, I believe, to support HB 30 because it codifies the English learner testing supports that are already outlined in the Tennessee Department of Education guidance. And schools are expected to follow that guidance and provide English learners accommodations. But of course, it's not codified in statute. That means that it can be interpreted differently across Tennessee districts and be implemented inconsistently, and it likely is. When something is codified, of course, it creates that enforceability, the consistency, and the clarity across districts and stability across administrations. It ensures that access to the accommodations doesn't depend on interpretation or even local implementation in schools. We already codify accommodations for students with disabilities because all of us in this room understand that access is not advantage. And I heard that quite a bit today with the school voucher testimony and school choice testimonies. So this committee has emphasized the importance of high quality data to determine where students need support in our schools. Codification will ensure that that statewide assessment, it reflects those accurate results and those impacts of those supports. And more importantly, that the data reflects the excellent teaching that's happening statewide. That affects funding decisions, instructional planning, and even how we evaluate school performance. So as districts in Tennessee become increasingly data-driven, preserving that integrity and the consistency of that data is, of course, essential. As a former English learner in Florida, I remember very well knowing the answer in class, but not yet having the language to express it. But I stand before you today because those supports worked. Florida, where I grew up, is currently ranked second in education by U.S. News and World Report. And for reference, they have codified the assessment accommodations for English learners since the year 2000. So this shows us that codification isn't unusual. It's a standard way to ensure that statewide consistency, uniformity, and fair access to students. So I repeat, access is not advantage. HB 30 doesn't create special treatment. It just safeguards the integrity of Tennessee's assessment system. My mind you, at no additional cost to the state as there's no fiscal note. So I respectfully urge you to support HB 30. Thank you so much for your time. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you for that. Members, any questions for our guests? Chairman Watt?
Thank you. Not a question about the bill, but where in Florida did you grow up?
Miami.
Miami? Yeah, I grew up in Naples. Right
Awesome.
across
Beautiful.
On the other side. Every time I talk to somebody from Florida, I always got to bring that up.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great place to grow up. Thank you for
Mhm.
being here.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Thank you again for your time and for your points that you made. Without objection, members, we will go back into session. All right, we'll bring Chairman Clemens back up. Any questions or Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. As you could point out, even though DOE can do this, it's not codified. What you're trying to do is codify this, right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
All right, members, any other questions? Seeing none, looks like we're set to vote. Mr. Clerk, can you please open the board up for voting? Members, please cast your vote. Would any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 8 ayes, 0 noes.
All right, and with that, House Bill 30 passes on to full education. Thank you. You've already got the votes, so you can move on. All right. Item number 5, House Bill 2286, we will roll to the Hill. That brings us to item number 6, House Bill 1740 by Representative Glenn, who's been waiting patiently there today. Properly motioned. Representative Glenn, you are recognized on House Bill 1740, and I think you do have an amendment.
I do, Mr. Chairman. It is amendment number 014232.
All right, do I have a motion? Properly motioned. Members, it does rewrite the bill, so without objection, we will vote to adopt amendment 014232. All those in favor, please say aye. All opposed, say no. The ayes have it. We are back on your bill as amended. You're recognized on House Bill 1740.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. This bill was brought to me by a constituent over the summer. After bringing it to me, I did the research to find out about the IEA account. And what it is this account basically says that students can qualify for an IEA if they have attended a public school previously. However, this particular constituent child was a disabled child who had never actually participated or attended a public school. And because of that requirement, they were not able to apply for the IEA account. So what this bill does is waive that one requirement, allows them to be added into the qualification if they have not attended a public school. And as long as they have a certified doctor's note and an IDE plan, they will be qualified. It doesn't mean they get it. It just means they'll be able to qualify for this program. So basically, it just allows those who have never, based on a medical condition, to apply for the IEA account. And that's what this bill does.
All right, thank you for that explanation. Members, any questions for our sponsor? Seeing none, I think that we are set to vote. Mr. Clerk, please open the board up for voting. Members, please cast your vote. Would any member wish to change their vote? All right, Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 7 ayes, 0 noes.
All right, and with that, House Bill 1740 moves on to full education. All right, that brings us to item number 7, House Bill 2247 by Representative Johnson. Properly motioned. Representative Johnson, you are recognized on House Bill 2247.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what this bill does is require private schools that receive public funds from the voucher program to make their curriculum and educational materials public, as public schools currently have to do, and their students do the same standardized testing, with that they hire certified teachers as public schools do. It's hard to call schools private schools now, or many of them, when they receive public tax dollars, especially in Knox County, where a public school student receives $5,800 from the state, but a private school student receives $7,300 from the state. In Davidson County, a public school student gets $4,400 from the state, and a private school student gets $7,300 from the state. I can't quite understand, if we expand vouchers this year, we're going to be talking about within 2 more years, $1 billion out of our budget going to private school vouchers with no accountability. We have said up here, for the years that I have been up here, we've said how important it is that we put a letter grade on our schools, that we require our schools to catalog all their materials, that we require certified teachers, and we require that they have specific intense evaluations each year, and that we require that our kids have these evaluations. How is it that we can put $1 billion into schools where none of those things matter? It's a different situation now. As soon as you start publicly funding what is considered a private school, how are the taxpayers not given any accountability for those schools? Recently, at our the Knoxville delegation met with our school board, and the school board created this beautiful 50-page, or the school system created this beautiful 50-page booklet on how they were spending those public tax dollars, on how each one of those dollars was spent to get accountability, how many schools came off the bad list, what programs were working, what programs weren't working. And they're getting $5,800 from the state. We see none of that from private schools who are getting $7,300 from the state for every student. How is there a place in our budget where $1 billion can come out and we don't hold those schools to account? We don't require them to do the same testing so that we can compare, because anybody in schools knows we have a required set of standards in public schools that we have to teach, and the tests that we give test those standards. We will never know what private schools are teaching or testing if we're not giving the same tests. So what this bill will do, because these folks are now getting public dollars, often far more public dollars go to the private vouchers than go to the public schools. If we say these things have worked and this is what has improved our education system, why wouldn't we not require those same things of the private schools that are getting the same dollars, or even in some cases more dollars? And that's what this does. This makes sure that the public taxpayer has accountability for the dollars being spent in these schools that have to do none of the things that public schools are required to do.
Thank you. Representative McKenzie, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing this piece of legislation. As I tell folks, I don't know about you all, my colleagues, but I get a lot of people asking for to get state money. You know, a lot of nonprofits or you know, and they're great organizations. They do great work. But the first thing I tell them before they start applying for, you know, our appropriations and whatnot, I say, taking government money comes at a cost. There are some things you're going to have to do and a way that you're going to have to do it when you accept government funds. And that's just because these aren't, it's not my money coming out of my pocket. These are taxpayer monies coming in from my hard-earned work. So thank you for bringing this piece of legislation. And I'll make one statement in that I know you were here for the earlier conversations. The two flavors of vouchers that we have in the state right now, the program in Shelby, Davidson, and Hamilton County, those students are required to take the TCAP test. The new ones aren't. And that to me is a gap. And hopefully we'll be able to close that gap in a direction that this bill is pouring us through, because we've gotten some valuable data from the 2 years worth of testing scores that we have, and that's it. We're doing a pretty good job with our with our public schools as it relates to the compared to the private schools. So Is that the type of information that you're seeking to gain with this bill, to see if those students with the educational, with the voucher, the new flavor of vouchers are doing better than our public school students, or better than they were doing when they left public schools?
Representative Johnson?
Absolutely. That's what we have to do when we have as many or more public dollars going to those private institutions. If they are giving tests that can't compare to ours, and there's no two tests that you can give and then actually reliably and validly compare those tests, it can't be done. It needs to be the same test. And it was very important for that first project for those 3 counties to do that testing so that we knew. And what we found out was that their testing was not better than the public school kiddos. And that's typically what we find in private schools. For some reason, people have this idea that private schools are better. What the difference is with private schools, true private schools, back when private dollars paid for them, was that the families had more resources. And so when you compare those to the public school kiddos with the same amount of resources, they were comparable. The private school kids were not better than the public school kids. And so we know this to be true through all the research and data that's been collected in the past. So expecting different outcomes, there should be no expectation for a different outcome. And so we need to be measuring those outcomes, because that's the only way we're going to see if that's a valid use of a taxpayer dollar. And like I said, I've been up here for some years, and all of these things we keep saying, we've got to do this to make our schools better and to make our kids' education better. How come they're not good for what's good for the goose is good for the gander? And how come the same thing doesn't apply to private schools that get these tax dollars?
All right, Representative McKenzie?
Yeah, quick follow-up. So you've been up here longer than I have. Do you know any other department or any other funding stream that the state is giving out to the millions of dollars? Let's call it $500 million, where there's no real accountability. Are there any other streams of funds that we expend where we don't ask for accountability?
I know of 0 departments that get funding to the tune of hundreds of millions, and what in 3 years with the expansion would be $1 billion that has no accountability to the taxpayer. And you can't say that whatever current test they give is accountability, because we don't even know what standards that test teaches. And we don't even know what standards those schools are teaching, because they don't have to teach the state standards. You know, folks may not realize this, but as it comes, as this progresses, you are going to see that there's no accountability for these schools, and it's going to be a mistake, and we're going to be sorry. I'm trying to put this in place so that if we say that this works in the public schools, then we should have it in the private. And if you don't think that the $1 billion is important enough to carry this through, then maybe we are wasting our money with all of the stuff in the public schools. Why don't we just get rid of it there? I mean, you say it works, but if you really thought it worked, why wouldn't you do it to the other schools getting $1 billion in public funds?
All right, members, any other questions? Chairman Watt?
Thank you, Chairman. What about the part about requiring private schools to only hire licensed teachers? That's still in here, right?
Yes.
Representative Johnson?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we should be hiring certified licensed teachers, and private schools do not have to do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, members, any other questions? Seeing none, I think we're set to vote. Mr. Clerk, please open up the board for voting. Members, please cast your votes. Does any member wish to change their vote? All right. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 2 ayes, 5 noes, 1 present not voting.
All right, with that, House Bill 2247 fails to pass. All right, that brings us to item number 8, House Bill 1889 by Representative Hammer. Properly motion. Representative Hammer, you are recognized on House Bill 1889.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I got this bill, House Bill 1889, after reading some stories around Florida had an audit of their related voucher program, and being a couple of years older than ours, it was kind of what I thought would be a precursor for what some of the problems we'll see here. Interesting enough, their state senate has kind of taken this audit, has created a legislative package for that, and has passed bipartisanly, unanimously so far. But what this legislation does is strengthens the oversight and accountability for Tennessee's Education Freedom Scholarship Program by establishing clear audit authority, transparency requirements, and reporting standards. This bill authorizes independent audits by the Comptroller of the Treasury, requiring participating private schools to undergo annual financial audits, and expands public reporting on program spending and student outcomes. It also includes guardrails to prevent receiving regular academic progress updates, and requires a formal program evaluation and legislative review before continuation. Overall, some of the individual items for oversight and accountability in this bill, again, authorizes the comptroller audit of the voucher program participating private schools, requires an annual CPA financial audit and spending disclosures from private schools, expands public reporting on voucher spending, enrollment, student outcomes, adds transparency requirements, requires state-aligned student assessments with TCAP program, and directs a formal program evaluation, including a sunset provision for legislative review. And one of the most interesting things I think you got the committee needs to understand is it adds a program for adding an individualized student ID number. From what happened in Florida, the headline from the Washington Post was Florida loses data for 30,000 students. And you think about the reality of what's happening now within the confines of the Education Freedom Scholarship. You're having a lot of, let's call it piggybacking and hopscotching from students potentially going from private to public and vice versa. We had a long conversation on the House floor last night about the importance of data and tracking. Well, this is one that was probably the most glaring thing that was needed from the Florida program. And I wanted to make sure that the committee was understood that. And then lastly, it limits eligibility of the program to 300% of school lunch eligibility. And with that, I'm welcoming any questions and consideration. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Any questions for our sponsor? All right. Seeing none, I think we're set to vote. Mr. Clerk, please open up the board for voting. All right. Does any member wish to change their vote? All right. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 3 ayes, 5 noes.
All right, with that, House Bill 1889 does fail to pass. All right. That takes us to item number 12 on the calendar, House Bill 1896 by Representative Mayberry. Oh, do I have a motion in a second?
Sorry.
I'll give you a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Oh, so, 2 motions there. All right, we're good to go. Representative Mayberry, you're recognized on House Bill 1896, and I do believe you have an amendment.
I do, Mr. Chairman. It's
All
015646.
Well, good luck getting the motion on this. If you had, do I have a motion on the amendment?
Second.
Properly motion. Members, it does rewrite the bill, so without objection, we will vote to adopt amendment 015646. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The ayes have it. We are back on your bill as amended. You're recognized on House Bill 1896.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This legislation clarifies certain testing requirements for online-only self-paced Category 3 private schools. Currently, the state board rules requires that Category 3 private school administers a national standardized achievement test covering the areas of English language, arts, and math to each pupil in grades 3 through 11 once per school year. That's the key, once per school year. The annual requirement creates certain challenges for students enrolled in a Category 3 school that provides a fully online self-paced high school educational program where students that enroll midway or towards the end of the school year are still required to take an annual test per board rules, even though they have not yet completed the course materials for their grades tested, leaving them unprepared. In addition, the program is self-paced. Non-traditional students who have enrolled in these programs due to certain circumstances, such as one that has a medical event that prevents them in-person learning and have often not completed the full grade curriculum prior to being tested. To address this issue, House Bill 1896 instead requires requires Category 3 private schools that provide a fully online, self-paced high school educational program to administer a nationally standardized achievement test covering the areas of the English language, arts, and math to each student upon completion of 50% of high school program and once more upon completion of 90% of the high school program to ensure students are prepared for the materials tested. The amendment that we put on today clarifies that the legislation does not apply to those who have received the Education Freedom Scholarships or the ESA pilot program. And if a Category 3 school chooses to participate in the EFS or the ESA program and enrolls in the EFS or ESA funded students, they remain subject to the statutory testing requirements. In addition, if the learners complete the entire high school program within a 12-month period, they shall only be required to take the nationally standardized achievement test once. The legislation only applies to students ages 19 and under to avoid capturing various adult learners who utilize these same programs. I stand ready for questions.
All right, thank you for that. Members, any questions for our sponsor? Chairman Slater, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to the sponsor, this seems to be very narrowly drafted. I think it probably will only capture one Category 3 school. And it kind of is a reminder to everyone, Category 3 schools are private virtual schools. And based on this language, best I can tell, it only captures one of those Category 3 schools. Am I reading that correctly?
Representative Mayberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the question. Yeah, my understanding is maybe one or two schools. The aim of this is, say you have a child who has like cancer and they're in this program, it's giving them a little flexibility to get through the materials which they maybe not have learned when the test is on the annual calendar, to give them a little more flexibility to take it when they actually receive the information to do, better on the test.
Chairman Slater.
So I do agree that this school or these one or two schools certainly would be helpful to someone who is maybe battling a health issue. But my understanding of these schools is that they also serve a much broader type of student. And it does give them a great deal of flexibility. But as it relates to the testing is very unique. And I think that's what you're asking for here is an exception. And as I read this, the exception, it would be possible for a student to go through a majority of high school having never or only occasionally taken a test. And since this is narrowly drafted as well to include one or maybe two schools, the schools that are captured in this were just last year or within the past 2 years, Category 4 schools. So I think it's a little bit premature to go ahead and to adopt this exception when these schools had just recently qualified to become Category 3 schools. And there is a difference between Category 3 and Category 4 schools. So with that, sponsor, I'm going to have to vote no on this. I just don't, I think this carves out too large of an exception for too small of a group of schools and students. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members, Representative Mayberry.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate the feedback. Yeah, so we're trying to help students that are in these situations, and once they're done a percentage of the class, then they're going to take the test. So if they're in the class as they're going through, they're going to have to take the test all the way through high school, just like any other student. But we're just basing it on percentage of work done in that class versus a date on the calendar.
Chairman White.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, having a discussion with legal, make sure I understand everything correctly. The issue right now is when we passed legislation on the EFS legislation for those to get that funding, we held firm on category 1, 2, and 3 schools because there's more accountability there. So correct me if I am wrong, or you're saying now, after we pass that legislation, that the exemption you're looking for is that they would be outside the category 3 school?
Representative Mayberry?
I'm not sure if 100% understand your question, but the amendment made it where if they are have a student that's enrolled in the EFS or the ESA, that they will continue doing it as the law states now. And they'll go through the testing based on the calendar year. For those who are not, they have the ability to do it based on percentage of work done.
Chairman
Okay.
White, do you want us to go out of session and have legal, maybe see if they can get us an answer to your question?
If you don't
Yeah,
mind,
exactly.
legal.
All right, without objection, members, we will go out of session. Go to legal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Katie Robertson, Office of Legal Services. The amendment that was adopted just now, it has in subsection C that this section does not exempt a private school that's participating in ESA program from having to comply with the assessment requirements in the ESA program, and then the same for private schools participating in the EFS program. They would still have to comply with the testing requirements of the EFS program.
All right, thank you. Any questions while we're out of session? All right, seeing none, we'll go back into session. Chairman White, anything else? All right, members, any other questions? Seeing none, looks like we are set to vote. Mr. Clerk, please open up the board for voting. Members, please cast your vote. All right, Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 3 ayes, 4 noes, 1 present not voting.
All right, with that, House Bill 1896 does fail to pass. That brings us to item number 13, House Bill 88 by Representative Akeem. Properly motion. Representative Akeem, you are recognized on House Bill 88, and I don't think you have an amendment, do you? Oh, yes, I'm sorry, you do. You have an amendment that does not rewrite the bill. What's the drafting code that you have on that?
015144.
All right, 015144. That's what we have. It does not rewrite the bill. Would you care to explain the amendment briefly before we vote on it?
Okay, basically what we're doing is the date, July 1.
Just updates the effective date. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay. All right. All right. Second, properly motioned on the amendment. Members, without objection, let's vote to adopt amendment 015144. All those in favor, please say aye. All opposed, say no. The ayes have it. We are back on your bill as amended. You are recognized on House Bill 88, Representative Akeem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this bill is about is the resources and the quality of education that teachers provides in our schools, and especially in underfunded areas or communities. And what we're asking is that we want to curb the number of teachers who leave the system after 4 years. 1 in 4 of our teachers, new teachers, leave after 5 years. So what we're asking is that we look at, I would call a minimal amount of money as an increase in supplies. If the teachers don't have the supplies they need in their class, and the LEA or the state is not been helping with that, new teachers are already strained economically. And then when you add to it that they need supplies for their schools, for their classrooms, that adds to the strain, and some decide to go ahead and leave for another profession. What we're asking is a 70-30 split, 70% from the state, 30% from the school system. And that moves the number from $200 to $500 per teacher. With that, Mr. Chairman, Stand ready for questions.
All right, thank you for that. Members, any questions for our sponsor? Chairman Slater, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Hakeem, for bringing this legislation. As an educator myself and from a family of educators, I know that often what takes place is the teachers have to take out of their own pocket money so that they can purchase supplies to make sure that they have everything that their students need. And so I certainly applaud this. Of course, your biggest hurdle is going to be making it through finance. But thank you so much for bringing this legislation.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll agree with Chairman Slater in that it's a great piece of legislation. I actually had something similar. It wasn't near these amounts, like $100. And in the old BEP formula, there wasn't going to be a financial impact just because of the way the structure of it. But now with TISA, with the money following the student, that became a financial impact on it. But the impetus behind that and the bill passed is our teachers need additional, love is what I would call it. It's a small token, but they just need something to say that from the state, we understand that we're not paying you a whole lot, that you're doing this because you're called to do it, that you're doing it because this is a profession and an advocation. So thank you for bringing this piece of legislation. As Chairman said, it may be a tough road to get through finance, but from an education standpoint, this is a great piece of legislation. Thank you.
All right, Representative Hakeem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I thank both of my colleagues for their comments. And, if we don't provide for our teachers this necessity, knowing that there's a need and that it impacts the quality of education we receive for our children. And we have teachers, great teachers, who the strain is such by not having these funds to get these necessary items, who leave the school system. What are we talking about education for if we won't provide some of the basic needs that the school system and teachers have? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Members, any other questions? Seeing none, I think we're set to vote. Mr. Clerk, please open up the board for voting. Members, please cast your vote. Do any member wish to change their vote? All right. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 8 ayes, 0 noes.
All right, with that, House Bill 88 moves on to full education. All right, that brings us to item number 14, House Bill 2434 by Representative McKenzie.
Second.
Properly motion, Representative McKenzie, you're recognized on House Bill 2434.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House Bill 2434 addresses an implementation issue within the Age Appropriate Materials Act that was enacted by this body in 2022. Under current law, school boards and public charter schools are required to adopt policies for reviewing challenged materials. And that local process is central to the laws enacted in 2022. The problem is, in some districts, materials have been removed from circulation before the formal process has been completed, as intended by our original piece of legislation. So this has created some inconsistencies for our educators, for our librarians, administration, school boards, students, and families. And so what House Bill 2034 simply does is to clarify that materials undergoing formal review must remain in circulation until the review process is completed and a final determination is made according to the locally adopted policy. This bill does not change any standards or review authority. And so what this legislation does, bottom line, is it ensures fairness for the review procedures that our local boards have already established and reinforces local governance, ensures that the laws function as intended. For that, I stand ready for questions.
All right, thank you for that, Representative McKenzie. And members, we did have 2 people that had put in to testify on this. So without objection, we will go out of session and bring up Evelyn Hunter, and excuse me if I say this first name wrong, Zan Lasco. Correct me if I'm wrong on that once you get up here. When you do get up here, have a seat at one of the chairs at the table, and we'll turn the microphones on. And just for the record, make sure you state your name and who you represent, and you'll have 2 minutes each for opening statements, and then we'll open it up for any questions. Go ahead. There you go.
Hello, and thank you to the Chairman Haston and the subcommittee for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Dr. Evelyn Hunter, and I'm a public youth librarian speaking on behalf of the Tennessee Library Association in support of House Bill 2434, which would require school districts to follow their own policies by ensuring that they keep a book on their school library shelves during the reconsideration process as intended by the Age Appropriate Materials Act of 2022. I'm also the parent of 4 children, including 1 graduate of public schools and 3 teenagers who still attend public schools. And I'd be very distressed to learn that a book that my high school age son needs for an upcoming AP exam is unavailable for him to check out at his school library because some other parent challenged the book he needed. I emphatically support every parent's right to determine what is appropriate reading for their child. Which means I also support that same right for myself while I raise my own children. I also deeply support every parent's right to request the reconsideration of a book in their student's school library, but one parent's request should not affect every other child's access to necessary and important materials in the school library. School librarians are now often scared and confused about what to do with the challenged books when their administrators, although surely well-intentioned, do not follow the thoughtful processes our school districts have worked so diligently to establish. These processes are so important because they allow parents to raise concerns while also ensuring that educators and administrators review the full work and evaluate it carefully before making a decision. The reconsideration process is designed to ensure thoughtful, fair decisions about library materials. Typically, a group of administrators and teachers reads the entire book, considers its relevance and appropriate for their school community, and then decides whether the book should remain in the library. During this process, most district policies state that the book should remain on the shelf and available to the students until the review is complete. However, librarians are sometimes instructed to remove the book immediately before that review has taken place. And when that happens, school librarians are placed in an impossible position, caught between district policy, their professional ethics, and directives from their supervisors. Instead of focusing on supporting students' learning and intellectual growth, librarians may feel that they must focus on protecting their jobs, and in some cases, on protecting the continued existence of the school library itself. The Tennessee Library Association supports all librarians throughout the state, including our incredibly well-educated, professionally responsible, and student-focused school librarians. Every single school librarian who works with the children of the state of Tennessee wants to do the best work possible in service to those students in their schools. And that desire to do good work includes following the policies and procedures established by their school districts. When the districts fail to follow the policies and procedures they themselves have designed for the school librarians to follow, the immediate results are confusion, chaos, and a chilling effect on their ability to support each one of their students. Again, this bill does not decide which books belongs in school libraries. It simply ensures that districts follow their own review process before making that decision. Please strengthen and codify the ability of our local education agencies to serve their communities by supporting HB 2434 to ensure that they can take the time to follow the intent of the Age Appropriate Materials Act of 2022 faithfully and fairly. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead and state your name and who you represent, and then
Okay.
you also have.
Good morning, and thank you to the subcommittee for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Zan Lasco, and I'm a retired high school librarian and a member of the Tennessee Association of School Librarians. Today, I'm here in support of HB 2434. In the Age Appropriate Materials Act of 2022, a standard was set for local education agencies to have clear guidelines for titles to be published online, have both selection and reconsideration policies, and ensure periodic reviews are occurring. These procedures are consistent and supported as best practice for professionally certified librarians. However, the standard set by this legislature has not been followed by some districts, allowing hundreds of books to be removed at a single time. This has caused concern and frustration, as you heard, for school librarians. They're getting conflicting information given the policies set forth by this legislature and the actions being taken at the local level. This has caused at least one school district thus far to be sued, consuming money that could be going to other student needs. Policies are set forth to make sure that clear, consistent, and fair action is taken, just as in business, to have operational efficiency and legal protection. The mass preemptive removal of books has clearly not followed this policy. In some instances, lists contain books that aren't even in the school's library collection. In addition, some of these titles are needed by students who use them for advanced placement exams and writing assignments. If these books are removed without following the stated review process, then that puts these students at a disadvantage when competing with their peers for scholarships both in-state and nationwide. Further, unintended consequences have been a loss of curriculum support materials and delays for months in book purchases. As school librarians, we respect the rights of each reader and welcome questions or reconsiderations from the people we serve. To do this in a transparent and consistent manner, the Tennessee Association of School Librarians asks that you pass HB 2434 to the full committee and set forth guidelines for local education agencies to follow their own policies without further wasting resources, time, and money. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Members, any questions for our guests? All right, Representative Akeem?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of clarity. Essentially, what we're asking is for the books to stay on the shelf until the normal review is done. All right, did I leave anything out? Okay, thank you.
All right, members, any other questions? All right, thank you all both for being here today. You can go back to your seats, and without objection, we will go back into session. And we are back on House Bill 2434 by Representative McKenzie. Any questions for the sponsor? Representative Bolso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Representative McKenzie, I have a real problem with this bill because it doesn't do what the witnesses just testified to. The witnesses testified that LEAs should follow their own policies with regard to the Age Appropriate Materials Act. I agree with that. But in looking at this language, it's actually restrictive. It says that LEAs cannot allow the removal of a book before a formal review process is completed. So in effect, what this bill does is it puts an injunction in place, a legislative injunction that says if a parent challenges a book, and if the librarian, if the superintendent, if the school board all believe that that book should not be there, that it's harmful to children, that it's not appropriate for the age and maturity levels of students who have access to it, it has to stay there anyway until a review process is completed. And to me, that is backwards. The law needs to be as it is, that if you have a librarian or a superintendent or a school board that determines that a book is harmful to children, they should be obligated to remove it immediately. The idea that we would put an injunction in place upon the filing of a complaint that requires the book to stay there until some lengthy review process is completed is not consistent with the existing statute. What this does is it actually imposes additional requirements upon LEAs because it requires that they put in their policy this language that is currently not part of the statute. And for that reason, I have to be voting against this measure.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we may need to go out of session to ask legal because there were several extra words thrown in there that I think gets at a personal opinion and not necessarily the law that's in place. One, I don't think the process is described as lengthy. You use the word lengthy. I think that's to try to win favor. But also, you say that if everyone agrees, superintendent, school board, these other folks, then they still can't do it. They get to set the policy, the procedure. They get to set. So if all those people say it and they write it down and say if all of these people are saying it, then that's what happens. So again, this bill does not change existing law. So I'm going to ask if we could go out of session to see if and that's legal, that specific question, because I think that's damaging to what this bill actually does.
All right, Chairman Bosso, did you have a follow-up before we go out of session on that?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right. We'll go out of session and then Representative McKenzie, be thinking of how just be ready to restate that to legal just to make sure that they know the question. So without objection, we'll go out of session to hear from legal. And Representative McKenzie, if you could please ask that question for legal one more time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my direct question to legal is, does this bill change existing law? Or does it clarify that during the locally implemented school evaluation process, which is enacted in 2022, that's the only thing that we're asking, is that let that process complete, then they can remove or keep the book on the shelf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Katie Robertson, Legal Services. The bill is requiring that the policy adopted by a local board of education or public charter school governing body must not allow for the removal of material in the library collection that is being evaluated by the local board of education, public charter school governing body, or by the textbook commission until a determination is made to remove the material from the library collection. Also, I'll add that state law currently provides that the local governing bodies is required to make a determination on an evaluation within 60 days of receiving feedback.
All right, thank you. Representative McKenzie?
So thank you. So within 60 days, the process by law has to conclude. Is that correct?
Katie Robertson, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's correct. And if the local board does not make a determination within 60 days, then the parent can submit an appeal to the textbook commission to make that determination.
Thank you. Members, any other questions for legal? No. All right. With that, we will go back into session. And Representative Reeves, did you have a question for the sponsor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So sponsor, I appreciate that, this is a topic that's been under discussion for a number of years, and we've kind of wrestled with this issue. I guess the issue that I have with this particular legislation is it flips the presumption for the material that is being challenged instead of against the material being challenged. And I just want to read from the statute the various reasons why a particular material may be challenged. It's a material that in whole or in part contains nudity or descriptions or depictions of sexual excitement, sexual conduct, excess violence, sadomasochistic abuse, or is not appropriate for the age or maturity level of a student in any of the grades kindergarten through 12, or is patently offensive or appeals to the prurient interest. And I think if we're being good stewards of our public school system, we have to have a presumption in favor of those making that challenge to adequately review those materials. And I know that school boards across the state have developed a system for doing that. I know it's been a difficult process to do that, but now they have a process, and I would hate for something that is that patently offensive or has some of those things exposed to children for 60 full days while a school district makes that presumption and or makes that decision rather. And so for that reason, I need to vote against the bill. Thank you.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's exactly as you described at the end of your conversation. Our school boards have done that. They have these processes in place, and these things have been vetted and are out. So those sadomasochistic, sexually hot sexual things, they're out. They're out. They're done. They're not in there. But what gets flagged by some parents or nudity is an anatomy book. That is those types of things are flagged by, I would say, an excessive parent, but those things are necessary for our AP students to understand and to graduate and to be able to pass the test. So what you get now what we're looking at these boards and these policies are these nuanced things. We're talking about, Auschwitz and the Holocaust. Those things might be offensive to some, but our AP classes, our advanced students, they need to understand these and put these things in context from a historical perspective. But for an unknowing, not fully understanding parent or passionate parent or an outside instigator, those things are being brought forward. So all those nasty things that we're talking about, that you were talking about, they're gone. If they were ever there, they're gone by now. So let's focus on 2026 going forward. We have to keep our anatomy books in. Can you agree with that? My encyclopedia, showing my age, had the little plastic pages that showed, female anatomy. They peel off one, the skin, you turn the page, the organs are there. That to some people are offensive now. And they get to have that encyclopedia or that website removed. That doesn't help anyone. So that's what we're talking about here. So again, we're throwing extra words out there. These nasty words that really don't apply to what we're talking about here. All we're talking about are the books that are here now. If a parent or an organization has a complaint about it, it's an AP, it's an anatomy book. They get 60 days to see whether this anatomy book is too much from a sexual standpoint or not. So that's what the bill does. So again, there's a lot of extra things being thrown into the conversation that really don't apply. All this is saying, that book has been there for decades, maybe even a century. And now we want 60 days to evaluate whether it stays or it goes. Again, I'm all for process-driven decisions, not emotional decisions. We as a state, we got to get out of these emotional ticketed things. We got to make our decisions based on a process. And that's what the bill did. The bill in 22 and enhanced in 2024 set a good process for us to move forward on. People just aren't applying those because, I got a mad mama over here, so I'm just going to pull it. This says no, don't pull it until we look at it and make a process-driven decision.
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Reese.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate the intent. And I don't think that most reasonable people would disagree that we need to understand anatomy and Auschwitz and everything else. You made a statement a couple times, Mr. Sponsor, that additional words were being thrown out. And I guess the issue that I have with the current bill is none of the words that you just used are in the bill. It paints with a very broad brush, and it does change the presumption in favor of instead of against. And with that, I'll leave that there, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Chairman Watt.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sitting here trying to figure out how, you don't split the baby over an issue like this, but try to find a solution. This is one of those things that we didn't have to deal with 40 years ago. I find myself leaning with Representative McKenzie because you've got to have a process. And without process, you have chaos. Now, you could have 100 parents come in and say, I don't like that book, and pretty soon you got an empty library if you don't have a process. So that's why the review thing that we passed, was it last year or whenever we passed it, we did put in a process. Now, we all condemn the books that we know that were read to us and everything, we get that. But if you don't put in place a process, then the librarians don't know what to do. They struggle with their job, their accountability, and yet we have a lot of opinions out there which may or may not be good opinions. So I think Representative McKenzie is only asking for that we follow a process. Is 60 days too long? Probably I would shorten it if I were passing the bill again. But I'm kind of reasoning it like that, and I'd like to get the sponsor to see what he thinks.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I definitely agree, and I agree with where we are now, because now I don't know what where we got the 60 days from, but now that our policies are in place. That may have been why that there need to be some ramp up time while they understood how to evaluate the books and what teams. So I agree that 60 days might be a little long right now. I'd be willing to, entertain that because I agree with you. But the process needs to be the driver, not the complaint. We get complaints all the time. You all know it. We get complaints all the time, and 98.9% of them are frivolous. And so, and I'm not saying that's the case here, but I will say with where we are with our books and our shelves and our libraries, I would say we're in the minutia in terms of the things that are going to be legitimately pulled from our shelves at this point, 4 years into this law. So yes, I agree wholeheartedly with you, Chair.
Representative Mayberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sponsor, I appreciate the intent as well. Serving on a board that looks at these books, I believe the law has been followed as intended. Also, speaking to other school board members across the state, I believe we don't necessarily have these problems that have been shared today. It's not been my understanding that anatomy books have been taken off shelves. It's been, as Representative Reeves stated in the law, those are the types of books that have been taken off the shelves. But the thing I would also caution is to think that they're just new books would not be added on, because yet that's the question, where the books come from. We have libraries that are buying those sorts of books and purposely putting them on the shelves. From my understanding, from my director and talking to people on the ground in my county, is that book companies will send extra books within a section of books which you purchase for your library. And they'll just send these free books. And a lot of the books that we end up removing were books that they were sent to us for free, and that the librarian would then just catalog and put on the shelf because they were sent to us, they were free. And those types of books are going to continue to come. So it's going to continue to be an issue if we don't keep our eyes on the situation. But I believe the law has been followed as prescribed, and I believe it was a good law, and I support it. And for those reasons, I don't support this.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think your statement devalues what a librarian does. I grossly disagree with you. This is a career that these folks have gone through, and they don't just get books in. I got 20 books, they all go on the shelf. That's not how they're driven. That's not the truth. That's just not the process that where libraries are stocked. They get books all the time that never make it to the shelves. I've talked to a lot of librarians as well, and they understand the maze that they need to go through. And they understand that it's a legitimate maze, and they're willing to go through it. But let them go through it. Don't just say because somebody sent a sexually explicit book or an overly violent book that they automatically put it on the shelf. That's not fair to the professionals that have gone through huge education. You're on the school board. You know what they go through to be a librarian. They don't just pick them off the street and say, you're a librarian, take all the books that come in and put them on the shelf. That's not fair. That's not a fair assessment of how books get on our public schools' library shelves.
Representative Mayberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The alternative to that is they purposely purchase the books and purposely put them on the shelves. That's the alternative to that.
No, it's
So they either got on the shelves because they purchased them, or they were sent to them, they were cataloged, put on the shelves. And that's what I was told as a board member in my county. And so that's just the reference experience I can have for that.
Representative McKenzie.
This session in this room, we've heard all of these anecdotal, I would call lies, because you can't prove it. So how am I going to challenge? Somebody told me this. We're talking about laws here. You got one person that told you this, so I'm gonna vote against it. I have all of this empirical knowledge. I have all of this as a school board member, as a state representative. I have all of this knowledge on how things are actually done. But because somebody whispered in my ear one time, one day, show me a book that they intentionally put on the shelf that is explicit section. Take a picture of it in Montgomery County. I can't do it in Knox County. We got a lot more bookshelves than you all do. It doesn't happen. So I get to say, that's not true. No, I don't. I get to say, I hear what you're saying, but prove it. That's all this bill does. If that's happening, Montgomery County needs to have an audit today. You need to ask for that today and get those books off the shelves. But you're not going to do that because that's not the truth. Thank you.
Representative Mayberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, so we've been following the law that's in place that's working. So those books are not on the shelves today, to my understanding. I appreciate it.
All right. All right. Everybody having fun? All right, here we go. Anybody else? All right. I think that we are set to vote. Mr. Clerk, please open the board up for voting. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 3 ayes, 4 noes, 1 present not voting.
All right, with that, House Bill 2434 does fail to pass. That brings us to item number 15, House Bill 2435 by Representative McKenzie. All right, that has been requested to roll to the Hill. Without objection, House Bill 2435 is rolled to the Hill. All right, that brings us to all right, we got House Bill number 16, House Bill 664 by Chairman Watt. Motion. All right, properly motioned, Chairman Watt, and you do have an amendment.
Yes, sir. That is House Bill 664 you're referred to?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, the amendment I want to go with is 14439.
All right, 14439, and members, it does rewrite the bill. Do I have a motion? Motion. Probably motioned. Members, it does rewrite the bill, so without objection, we'll be voting to adopt amendment 14439. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. We are back on your bill as amended. You are recognized, Chairman Watt.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. This is a very simply worded bill. It basically says the years I've been up here, we have more than doubled the amount of money we put into our education, public and across the board. And all it says is an LEA or public charter school shall not use public funds to initiate or maintain any civil action or proceeding against the state or agency or officer of the state to challenge the school district accountability measure established pursuant to this title. And the reason I bring this up is I believe that every public dollar that we send out, which is now I think about 7.5 billion across the state, 9.5 billion if you add the federal money in, that every public dollar should advance student achievement. And when school districts fail to meet accountability standards, the response should be improvement, not litigation. Public tax dollars belong in the classroom, supporting our teachers and our students, not funding court battles. This legislation protects scarce education resources and keeps them focused on academic outcomes. And that's the gist of the bill. And with that, I renew my motion.
All right, members, any questions for our sponsor? Chairman Bolso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I've got a question, Chairman White, just about the scope of this bill. It precludes an LEA from using public funds to challenge what are called, quote, district accountability measures, close quote. Could you just explain briefly exactly what those accountability measures are?
Chairman Watt.
Okay, thank you. Itemized things like standardized tests, performance ratings, report cards, things of that thing. And we can put a couple more items on here. School districts are partners in a system. In the system, accountability measures are designed to identify problems and drive improvement, not to be avoided or delayed through lawsuits. And we can go to legal if legal can maybe give us a more of a definition as far as the public funds.
All right, without objection, we will go out of session and hear from legal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Katie Robertson, Legal Services. You had a question to what public funds would?
Chairman Bolso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, Ms. Robertson, I was simply trying to get some type of an understanding as to what is meant by school or district accountability measures. What falls within that scope that would be subject to this bill?
There are a number of district and school accountability measures that are in Title 49. And this would be, it's established, the measures are established pursuant to Title 49. There are school letter grades, priority school list, reviews of TISA funding if it's a low performing school. So there's many different accountability measures that are established in Title 49.
Chairman Bolso?
Thank you very much.
All right, members, any other questions? Seeing none, we'll go back into session and go back to Chairman White. Anything else, Chairman White?
No, thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Seeing
Appreciate it.
none, I believe we are set to vote. Mr. Clerk, please open up the board for voting. Members, please cast your vote. Does any member wish to change their vote? All right, Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 8 ayes, 0 noes.
All right, and with that, House Bill 664 moves on to full education. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we only have about 2 or 3 minutes left. We will roll the remaining of the bills to, we'll take the rest of the calendar, which is our final calendar next week. And with that, without objection, we stand adjourned.